stating that no one in the village was allowed to marry a foreigner without his approval. Once upon a time, in the village of Elmwood, nestled deep within the lush valleys of an African land, there lived a young girl named Alika. She was known for her remarkable intelligence and gentle beauty. Alika was the daughter of Omar, a renowned healer and scholar of the village. From a young age, she was taught not only the art of healing by her father, but also tales from distant lands, passed down through many generations. Although Alika was beloved by the villagers, she was different from the other women in Elmwood. Her father, before he passed away, had travelled to distant lands, bringing back new knowledge that filled their small home with ancient books and stories of faraway worlds. Every evening the two would sit by the hearth as Omar told her about places where the sky touched the mountain peaks and rivers shimmered like silver ribbons under the sun. Alika absorbed every word, and with each story her heart grew, her spirit became braver, and her curiosity could not be quenched. However, when she came of age, the men in the village who sought her hand in marriage often quickly departed after a few conversations, feeling overwhelmed by her intelligence and depth. Alika could discuss herbs and healing, stars and seasons, in a way that left many young men in the village feeling challenged and, quite frankly, intimidated. "Why not talk about family?" a friend suggested, "or the joys of motherhood?" Alika simply smiled, her heart set on finding someone who would appreciate her for all that she was. Over time, she embraced her solitude and devoted herself to teaching the village children, passing on the knowledge her father had shared with her. Some elders saw her as a mentor, others felt she was too independent and warned their daughters not to become the healer too wise to marry, like Alika. One morning, as Alika was teaching beneath the shade of a tree, she noticed something unusual in the village. Groups of people were gathered, whispering and pointing toward the grand palace on the hill. Curious, Alika asked a villager what was happening. "Haven't you heard?" a woman replied excitedly. "There are visitors from a distant land. They're searching for rare herbs, and there's a rumor that they've come from the east." The mention of the distant east piqued Alika's curiosity. She had read about lands where majestic mountains stood like giants, where the air was filled with mist, nurturing exotic plants. Without hesitation, she closed her classroom and quickly made her way toward the palace, where the visitors were being welcomed. She wove through the curious crowd and finally caught sight of the strangers. They stood tall and dignified, with almond-shaped eyes and expressions that were both gentle and wise, unlike anyone she had ever seen. Their clothing was elegant yet simple, adorned with unfamiliar colours and patterns, as if woven from pieces of the sky. As the village chief officially welcomed and introduced the guests, Alika's heart raced. She recognized their names and customs from the stories her father had shared. She decided she would meet these visitors, if only to offer her assistance during their stay in Elmwood. The next morning, Alika woke at dawn, her heart filled with excitement. She went into the forest to gather some of the village's rare herbs as a welcoming gift. She murmured a few greetings in their language, phrases her father had taught her long ago, and couldn't help but smile at her own nervousness. Just as she was about to leave the forest, she noticed a man kneeling by a distant bush. Recognizing him as one of the visitors, she stopped and observed as he carefully took notes and examined each plant, his focus so intense that he seemed unaware of her presence. It was the leader of their group, a man named Kiran. Gathering her courage, Alika stepped forward, but as she moved, her foot caught in a vine and she tumbled to the ground with a small yelp. Startled, Kiran turned, his expression shifting from shock to concern as he hurried over to her. "Are you all right?" he asked in perfect English, extending a hand to help her up. A bit flustered, Alika accepted his help, dusting off her clothes as she stood up. "I'm fine. I didn't expect to run into anyone else here," she said, then quickly added, "I mean, you probably didn't expect to run into me either." Kiran laughed, his warm smile easing her embarrassment. "It's not every day I meet someone so knowledgeable about herbs. I came here to find this particular herb," he said, holding up a small yellow leaf. "It's the perfect remedy for stomach ailments, especially when combined with a bitter leaf. Alika's face lit up. Exactly, but the Inika leaf is much stronger, she replied confidently. It will heal even the most intense pain and make you forget you ever felt it. Kiran raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. I'm not so sure. I've studied this yellow herb for years, and it has proven its effectiveness many times. Science doesn't know everything, Alika replied, her voice filled with pride for the traditional knowledge her father had passed down. Some things we learn through experience and tradition. You can't dismiss that just because it's not in a book. For a moment they stood there in silence, each holding firm to their perspective, until Alika quietly turned away, mumbling something about her students waiting for her. As she turned to leave, Kiran called after her, I respect your perspective, Alika. Perhaps one day you can show me just how powerful the Inika leaf really is. She paused, a slight smile on her lips, then continued walking, her heart fluttering in a way she hadn't felt in a very long time. Day by day, despite the slightly awkward beginning, Alika and Kiran gradually grew closer and spent more time together. Each morning, Alika eagerly went to meet Kiran's group, helping them gather the village's rare herbs and sharing the medical knowledge her father had passed down. Whenever the two of them explored plants and medicinal herbs in the forest, the world around them seemed private and mysterious, filled only with the sound of the wind and the fragrance of leaves surrounding them. Kiran listened intently each time Alika explained how to use each plant and branch, his eyes shining with admiration, while she couldn't deny the warmth in her heart when he smiled in agreement. When their work stretched into the afternoon, they would sit under the shade of a large tree, sharing a simple meal of fruits and vegetables. But in that moment, their worlds felt as if they had become one. Alika introduced Kiran to ogba, a traditional fermented vegetable dish, which immediately reminded Kiran of a similar dish from his homeland. They both laughed at each other's mispronunciations, with Kiran hesitantly trying to speak Elmwood's language, while Alika attempted to repeat the complex sounds of Kiran's native tongue. Each time they made a mistake, their laughter echoed through the quiet forest, adding warmth to their friendship, a connection that transcended language and cultural boundaries. From friendship, their relationship grew deeper, yet both held unspoken feelings in their hearts. However, not everyone in the village accepted the closeness between Alika and Kiran. Rumours about the two began to spread, accompanied by doubt and suspicion. In particular, their growing bond did not escape the notice of Amani, the village chief's daughter. Known throughout the village for her gentle and noble beauty, Amani had long been the desire of many, yet her heart was now set on Kiran, the visitor from afar. Each time she saw him and Alika talking, a surge of jealousy rose within Amani, like powerful undercurrents growing stronger. She felt betrayed, a bitter feeling filling her mind. She began to observe Alika and Kiran closely, noting every gesture, every look. Whenever she had the chance, Amani would try to insert herself into their conversations, creating accidental encounters to capture Kiran's attention. Each time Amani intervened, Alika would step back, trying to appear unaffected, yet she felt deeply that their relationship was under threat. Amani knew she could use her father's authority to prevent the relationship between Alika and Kiran, and a plan began to take shape in her mind, waiting only for the right moment to act. One evening, as Alika and Kiran sat by the quiet riverside, Amani appeared with a calm expression, but a piercing gaze. Kiran, I hope you can show me the herbs you've prepared to treat my father's joint pain, she said, her voice light, yet full of implication. Kiran hesitated slightly, glancing at Alika apologetically before standing up to follow Amani back to the village. Alika watched them walk away, a sense of disappointment settling in her heart. Though she told herself there would be plenty of other days to talk, she couldn't deny the growing presence of Amani in her relationship with Kiran. In the days that followed, Amani began appearing more frequently beside Kiran, often asking him to spend time with her for trivial reasons. She brought him lunch from the palace, a seemingly simple gesture, yet one with a clear message. She wanted to assert her presence, preventing Kieran and Alika from having private moments. During their encounters, Amani skillfully found ways to pull Kieran away from Alika, sometimes pretending to need help with herbs, other times claiming she wanted to learn more about his research. Kieran, out of respect for the chief's hospitality and Amani's role in the village, couldn't completely refuse her. But each time Amani appeared, Alika couldn't help but feel an invisible distance creeping between herself and Kieran. Their conversations became increasingly rare, and she realized that Amani's presence had created a rift in their relationship. One evening, Alika waited by the riverside where they usually met. The moonlight sparkled on the water, but her heart grew heavy as time passed with no sign of Kieran. She sat waiting, hoping he would appear, hoping it was all just a misunderstanding. But, as time slowly drifted by and the moonlight faded, Alika knew he wouldn't be coming tonight. An indescribable emptiness filled her, a quiet sadness seeping into each beat of her heart. Finally, Alika stood up and quietly walked home in the dim moonlight. As she made her way down the empty path, she acknowledged a truth she had felt for some time but had tried not to admit. Her heart had chosen Kieran. Her feelings for him had grown deep, and although she knew he might not stay forever, she couldn't stop her heart from longing to be with him. The next morning, as Alika stepped out of her house, a familiar voice sounded from behind. She turned and was surprised to see Kieran, his face radiant like the morning sun. His eyes held a look of apology and warmth as he approached her. "Alika," Kieran said, his voice tinged with a bit of awkwardness but full of sincerity. "I'm sorry for not coming last night. Things got complicated." He offered a gentle smile, one filled with meaning yet shadowed by weariness. "But honestly, I can't stop thinking about the times we spend together. It's what I look forward to more than anything else." Alika looked into his eyes, feeling a warmth seep into her heart. All the worries and sadness from the night before seemed to vanish the moment she heard his sincere words. She smiled, a small but radiant smile, and felt a surge of happiness, knowing that her feelings were not in vain. They stood there in a moment of silence, a peaceful pause amid the storm of schemes and pressures surrounding them. But both knew that this love would not be easy, and the road ahead would hold many challenges. After many days of work and exploration, the guests from the east had to prepare to leave Elmwood and return to their homeland. With only a few days left before Kieran planned to depart, the village of Elmwood was suddenly shaken by shocking news. The chief had just issued a new decree stating that no one in the village was allowed to marry a foreigner without his approval. The warning was even more explicit. Violating this law would lead to expulsion from Elmwood, a harsh punishment that stirred unrest throughout the village. Rumour had it that Amani, the chief's daughter, was the one who had driven this prohibition. For a long time, Amani had been proud of her pure lineage, valuing traditional customs and looking down on anyone from outside. To protect her culture and honour her heritage, she had gone to her father, urging him to issue a new law. She argued that intermarriage should be prevented to keep Elmwood's customs from being diluted. Moved by his daughter's determination and pleas, the chief agreed to the prohibition. This decision not only created an obstacle for Alika and Kieran, but also made their love more fragile than ever. When Kieran learned of the ban, his heart shattered. He had come to Elmwood out of curiosity, but now he was leaving with a deep affection for Alika. He prepared to depart the village, but the thought of leaving her tormented his soul. Memories of their time together played like a slow-motion reel in his mind, and each image only added to his anguish. His heart was torn between his responsibility to his research group and his longing to stay by Alika's side. As for Alika, she was no different. She felt the looming separation, and her heart grew heavy. As a daughter of Elmwood, she understood that respecting the chief and tradition was paramount, yet deep inside, her feelings for Kieran had grown too strong to extinguish. In the quiet of the night, under the dim light of an oil lamp, Alika opened her father's old book, searching for the guidance he had once left behind. She turned the pages in silence until her gaze stopped on a page with a map. It was a simple map that her father, Omar, had drawn. But what stood out was the line he had written along the edge of the map, a simple yet powerful phrase: "Wherever you go, love is your true home." Alika felt as if she could see her father's figure appear, his kind face looking at her with warm, loving eyes. These words were not merely a father's saying. They were encouragement, a silent approval for the journey she was about to embark on. That night, Alika decided she would not lose Kieran, the man she cherished, because of this unjust prohibition. With newfound determination, Alika knew what she had to do to overcome this challenge. She had to choose between love and tradition, but now, with her father's words as a guiding light, she no longer had any doubts. Her heart had made its choice, and though she knew the path ahead would not be easy, Alika was ready to face everything for Kieran, for the love they had built from the simplest of moments. As dawn broke, the first light of the new day filtered through the leaves, and Alika hurriedly ran through the mist-laden forest to find Kieran. Her heart pounded in her chest, each step intensifying the urgency within her. Finally, she saw him, standing by the river where they often spoke, preparing for his final departure from Elmwood. She called his name, her voice trembling slightly. "Kieran!" He turned, surprised to see her. "Alika!" She paused for a moment to catch her breath, then, with a resolute gaze, she said, "I will go with you, Kieran. Wherever you go, that will be my home." Kieran's eyes were filled with emotion, a mix of joy and a bit of confusion. He took her hand, feeling the resolve in her words, but still whispered, "Are you sure? Elmwood is your whole life. I can't ask you to leave it all behind for me." Alika looked deep into his eyes without a hint of hesitation. "I've made my decision, Kieran. My home isn't a place, it's wherever you are." And so they went together to the palace to meet the chief, Alika's heart filled with joy but also tinged with fear. As they entered the grand hall, they saw Amani standing beside the chief, her gaze coldly fixed on them both. The air around them felt heavy, and Alika could sense Amani's silent opposition. Kieran bowed, expressing his gratitude to the chief for his hospitality and announcing their decision. But Alika could clearly see that Amani was displeased. Her eyes were sharp, her lips pressed tightly together. Amani stepped forward, her voice sharp and challenging. "Father, will you allow them to break the village's decree?" She emphasized each word, leaving no doubt about her disapproval. "If they choose to leave, they should not take anything from our Elmwood. Elmwood cannot lose its precious values just because of blind love." The chief looked at Kieran and Alika for a long moment, weighing his daughter's words. Finally, he nodded slowly. "You may leave Elmwood, but you must leave everything behind. Not a single herb, not a single belonging of the village may go with you." Alika's heart was heavy, but she nodded in acceptance. She knew this was the price they had to pay to be together. As they left the palace, Kieran held her hand tightly, as if trying to give her strength. As they were packing up their few remaining belongings, a messenger unexpectedly arrived, carrying a letter from the chief. Alika and Kieran exchanged a worried glance, unsure of what might await them next. Opening the letter, they were surprised to find heartfelt words from the chief, expressing gratitude for their contributions to Elmwood, and promising that one day, if they wished, the village doors would be open to welcome them back. They left Elmwood, hand in hand, and it seemed that their fears had gradually faded. Under the morning sun, the path ahead looked uncertain, yet in their hearts, they knew they would build a new life together, where love would be the guiding light. In the end, they found home not in a place, but in each other. A reminder to us all that sometimes, the greatest journey in life is not about going far, but about finding the one who will walk beside us.